Dragons Dogma 2 is just around the corner. I've collected the final details that you need to know before diving into this epic journey, from common details like rift crystals and pawns to relationships and brothels, and maybe you shouldn't make your character a giant monstrosity. Let's go! Let me know which of these details you knew and which ones you didn't. So we'll start with the pawns and rift crystals. Now, pawns themselves, if you need a refresher, are AI-controlled companions designed to make the single-player journey that you're going to be on in Dragons Dogma 2, which, side note, it is single-player, it's not co-op or multiplayer, feel more like a party adventure, and it's going to be shared with those pawns. Now, you'll be able to make your Arisen, your player character, and a main pawn, which will journey with you throughout your whole journey, and then you'll be able to select up to 2 others created by others. The other 2 pawns will be selected from other player created pawns, just like your pawn can be selected by other player characters. Now, these downloaded pawns and your pawn as well will come with all of the experiences that they have had from other players' adventures, meaning that, say, if you are on a certain quest that maybe you don't actually know where you're supposed to go, if that pawn has already done that quest with another player, they will point you in the right direction and help you get there, as well as point out any hidden treasures that they may have found on their journey as well. Now, in Dragons Dogma 2, there is also specializations for these pawns. An example that we were shown in the original showcase was that the pawn can learn the Woodland Wordsmith specialization, which allows them to translate Elvish language, so when the player interacts with elves, they'll actually be able to understand them. Now, in order to get pawns, especially some of the higher level pawns, you'll need rift crystals. You may remember these from the original Dragons Dogma if you did play them, that you do need these to actually hire pawns, and you can actually get some extra crystals from the deluxe edition if you want them, but rift crystals will be able to be earned in game, assumedly similar to Dragons Dogma 1 from completing quests or just finding them throughout the world. Now, you'll be able to also use these rift crystals to purchase special items. What these are, we don't rightly know, but it's probably used in a way to balance the pawn hiring system, so you also can't just hire a max level pawn right from the start of the game, those sort of things. Now, pawns and the player will have vocations. Now, there are specific vocation types that we know of. The first being basic vocations, which you'll need to pick one of these to start off with at the very start of the game. You can watch my video on that if you want to break down, but you'll also need to pick one of these for your main pawn. The first is the thief, which are equipped with daggers. Thieves are agile fighters who thrive in close combat. There's also the mage, which is a ranged specialist. Mages can attack, they can heal, they can also cast supporting spells. The fighter is a melee specialist equipped with a sword and shield, more of a defensive melee character. And the archer is effective at long range with a bow and arrows with various effects that they can shoot at the targets. Now, on top of that, you've got advanced vocations. Now, these can be learned by the player and the pawn. They're sort of specialized versions of the basic vocations. Assumedly, there is going to be at least one of these for each of the basic vocations. Right now, though, we only know of the warrior, which is a melee specialist that can wield a powerful 2-handed weapon, a sorcerer, which is a mage user that can cast more powerful spells with their 2-handed staff, and then on top of this, we've got hybrid vocations, which can only be learned via the Arisen. Your pawns can't actually learn these vocations. Now, we know of the Mystic Spearhand, which is a vocation that blends short-range spear weaponry with long-range magic. You've also got the Magic Archer, which is essentially a blend of, say, the Archer and the Mage vocations, allowing you to use magical arrows and healing and support abilities. Or the Trickster, which is entirely unique in that you use a ceremonial sensor and specialize in illusion-based methods of distraction to distract enemies rather than actually fighting them and dealing damage. So you can use these distractions to, say, push enemies off the edge of cliffs or things like that. The Wayfarer is a vocation that will allow you to use every weapon in the game and learn different skills from each of the vocations. We do also know that there are more vocations than just these very specific ones, but there is more to these vocations than meets the eye. You'll not only be able to access light and heavy attack combos that are unique to the specific weapon that you're holding, you'll also get the 4 action skills reminiscent to Dragons Dogma 1 bound to your face buttons, and new with Dragons Dogma 2 is a unique ability for your vocation. This is bound to R1 in any of the footage you see of the pre-release characters when they're playing a specific vocations. You'll be able to see this changes. So for the thief, this is swift step, which is essentially like a dodge. The archer has steady shot, which we haven't seen a real description for, but it seems to be a slow controlled shot. Maybe it has a guaranteed hit or something. The fighter has defend, which is blocking with their shield. The mage has quick spell, which allows you to spend stamina to shorten a spell's cast time, allowing you to get more spells off. This is also shared for the sorcerer, it seems. The warrior has barge, which is a quick shoulder charge. The mystic spearhead has the redoubted bolt. The magic archer has rivet shot, which is like a loaded magic arrow shot, and pinpoint volley, which is like a more fast version of it seemingly. And the trickster has evoking essence. Now, some of these classes have multiple and they can actually change them sometimes depending on the skills that they're using, but you can absolutely bet that I'll have plenty of vocation guides for every vocation, unless there's like 30 of them, because, you know, we don't know how many there is right now, but we'll definitely have plenty of vocation guides on the channel. So make sure you like and subscribe, do all that good stuff for when they do come out. But you may be wondering how you actually learn new vocations or even upgrade the vocations you do have. Now, on your travels, you'll encounter vocation Maisters who have mastered specific vocations, and they'll actually help you learn new vocations as well as teach you new skills in existing vocations that you do have via special tomes. Now, in an interview with This Is Game, now this is translated from Korean into English, so, you know, apologies if it's not absolutely exactly correct, but essentially the vocation Maisters refers to a master NPC who has mastered a job or vocation, and you can only change vocations by meeting the Maester. Fighters and archers that you can choose from the beginning also have vocation Maesters, which you can meet them. You can obtain a new skill called a master skill. Finding the Maester is also expected to be an interesting content in the game, so these may actually be hidden. I'm curious to know if there's going to be Maesters for some really unique vocations that are like really hidden somewhere, like in like a corner of the map or something, and actually being able to find them is going to be quite interesting. I suspect that a lot of the more common vocations, you know, like say upgrading to a sorcerer or a warrior, will be much easier to find, and then some of your more secretive vocations will be much harder to find out there in the world. And speaking of that world, players will be able to explore a map roughly 4 times larger than the original. The size of the open world isn't the only thing to think about here. There will be specific events and monsters that will only occur at certain times of day or night, and there's also going to be quests that will be timed that we've learned from that same This Is Game article. So the question, the real world and time changes are emphasized. So in cases like the boy rescue quest, does the outcome change over time? And the director has said that, personally, I thought the users would be able to tell whether a quest was competing for an hourly rate just by listening carefully to the NPC story. However, co-workers around me said that it wasn't a very unfriendly system. So an hourglass icon appeared in the upper right corner of a quest list UI for quests with a time limit. So something to really point out here is that if you do see that hourglass symbol, that quest does have a time limit. And it does make sense, right? If a boy gets dragged away by wolves and goes missing, probably going to want to go and save him relatively quickly. I would suggest maybe not waiting to do that, considering that the wolves might get hungry. But it's an interesting detail to think of with that open world, is managing the time of day as well as managing, you know, what quests you're going to actually undertake at any specific time. And when you are undertaking those quests, it's worth also pointing out that there won't be unrestricted fast travel in Dragons Dogma 2. There is a fast travel system via the ox carts, which will allow you to travel along specific paths, but the world is designed to be explored on foot. So that hourly rate, just looking back to our previous point here, and the actual hourglass icon is definitely going to be important, that you'll need to think about where you're spending your time, and, you know, if you can actually reach certain locations before that timer does reach out. Like, you know, if you spend too long gallivanting around, that boy might actually die, and then the outcomes of those quests will be certainly different. But it's going to be interesting to see how that actually plays. Like, if you do have quests that are literally on the other side of the map, and, you know, maybe you don't want to actually walk all the way over there, it's going to be interesting to see how that overall play time is actually spent. I'm curious to see that once we do get our hands on the game. Just like the original, you'll be able to fight monsters big and small and be able to climb them, knock them over, and play around with the physics system, which has gone through a significant amount of changes that we have seen during the previews and footage released by Capcom. The most simple example of this is like knocking over trolls and having them hit their heads on rocks and taking damage. But we've also seen in footage released via Capcom on Twitter that you'll also be able to release rivers and interact with the environment in interesting ways to then damage enemies, like releasing the river here to knock the troll back and have them fall over to then take some damage. We've also seen the player knock over these creatures as well to have them like grab onto like another side of a ledge to make sort of an impromptu bridge that you can just like climb across them. And you can actually knock down real bridges to say if enemies are crossing it, chasing after you, you can knock down the bridge to like have them fall off to their death. It's going to be interesting to see how many of these different scenarios we can actually do. And I think the Trickster vocation will definitely excel in this sort of stuff, right? Because they are about those illusionist magic and implementing some sort of manipulation to the enemies. So I'm curious to see how they can really develop this system and bring the strengths of the environmental control out. Did you know that there are brothels in Dragons Dogma 2? Well, according to the ESRB rating, it does seem like there's going to be. So I always find reading ESRB ratings quite interesting because they give you some details about games that aren't necessarily public, that are out there at the moment. An important detail here that comes from the ESRB rating summary is that the player character can interact with sex workers, exchanging currency for services. A brief sequence depicts a player sitting on a bed with I'm not going to say that word in case I get demonetized, both wearing underwear before the camera fades to black. One cutscene briefly depicts the character kissing and rolling around in bed. No nudity. Curious? Two monsters are also shown with bare breasts, though there is no discernible details, i.e. no nipples. And could you believe it? The word shit appears in the game. Shit. That's it, guys. Pack it up. All right. So what's interesting about these is you get some details to obviously learn that there is going to be a brothel and you'll be able to hire some workers for some services. But, you know, if that's not your style, if you like a bit more emotional connection with some NPCs, that's also going to be there. So in that This Is Game article, which I've obviously got linked down below as well, which I don't think I mentioned before, is that the director has stated that as was the case with Dragons Dogma 1, there are fixed male and female NPCs with episodes related to love. If a character you like has a episode like that, you're lucky. If your affinity with these characters exceeds a certain level, your relationship can develop into something more than friends. Additionally, there are events that occur only when such developments occur, like these likability related events that can also be found in NPCs that cannot be dated. So interesting there that you'll obviously be able to do the, you know, like more services side, but also build relationships with these NPCs that can unlock specific events, and really building that connection with the characters is going to be a fun time, I personally believe. So just like Dragons Dogma 1, your character creation and your body type affects more than just your overall looks. Now, the specifics of this we don't rightly know, but we have got a little bit more information from a Regio Gazette Journal article, which does have a question: does the character's body type still come with advantages and disadvantages? If I make a huge character, will there be areas I can't get into? With the response, you won't have any situations where you won't be able to enter a place because of your body type. However, body type will still have an impact on your character's stats and characteristics. If your character is taller, then there will be characteristics that match that. If your character is shorter, there will be characteristics that match that. For example, body type can impact the amount of weight that they can carry or how fast their stamina recovers. Also, the length of their limbs affect the speed in which they move or the reach of their weapons. So essentially here, longer arms means you have longer reach of your weapons. Obviously shorter means you have shorter reach. And then the longer the limbs affecting your speed, I assume this means, you know, the longer your legs are, you'll actually be able to run faster because you've got faster legs. Then if you've got shorter legs, then you're only traveling a shorter amount of distance with those little leg steps. For the body type impacting the weight you can carry, assumably the heavier you are, like the bigger, bulkier you are, you might be able to carry more weight because more muscle, but in turn, your stamina will probably recover less quickly because of that size. Whereas conversely, the smaller you are, the less you can carry, but the faster your stamina will recover. The actual numbers and like value specifics here, we'll have to wait to the full game to do some actual testing, but it's something to think about really when you're building your character in that character creator. Either way, it's probably going to be not minimal differences, but smaller differences, right? Like it's not going to make or break your build, but if you are trying to min-max your Arisen and your main pawn, that's something that you should really be thinking about. A common detail that I have seen essentially everywhere is that it's going to be 30 FPS on consoles, which isn't technically correct. The announcement originally was that there was going to be no performance mode, but what has actually come out from the director is that Dragons Dogma 2 will release with an uncapped frame rate. Now, what this actually specifically translates to in terms of frames per second, we don't know, right? We're going to have to actually wait and see and play the game for ourselves. But this doesn't specifically mean it's going to be 30 FPS. It doesn't specifically mean it's going to be 60. Like it's probably, chances are it's going to be somewhere between 30 and 45, no doubt, just guessing essentially. You may have those areas where it dips and you probably have those areas where it doesn't. Whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, we won't know until we actually get our hands on the game. And I really think this is, if you are planning to play on console, a detail that you should be looking for in the reviews if you're not sure about picking up this game on console or PC or vice versa, is what that actual performance is on console, right? Like locked frame rates, even at 30, can feel really good if it's a smooth 30 frame rate. Like we've just seen that with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, right? The performance mode there is absolutely awful, and that 30 FPS graphics mode is definitely the way to go, and it feels smooth because it's a locked 30. Having an uncapped frame rate here could mean that you're running above 30 frames per second, and it feels a lot smoother. However, conversely, because the frame rate will be inconsistent and have that variable frame rate, it could feel not as clean as a locked 30 could feel. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think this is a detail that necessarily you need to worry about a lot. It's just something to think about if you are planning to pick up the game on console, and pay attention to that for the reviews. But I don't want to end on a sour note. I've got one more for you. Now, a question from the RGJ article from earlier. Will there be a new game plus option like the last game? Will we have challenging endgame content like Bitter Back Isle? And Itsuno, the director, says endgame is something that we can't comment on now because we don't want to spoil it, so please just look forward to it. That tells me there is going to be something in the end game that they just don't want to talk about it. So I'm really curious to see what this is, and I can't wait to dive in. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.